Hello and welcome to episode 295 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, I review some EV basics so you can make an informed decision on going electric. Tip number 1, don't stick your tongue in the charging port.
New Jersey has passed a new law requiring registration and insurance for electric bikes. Critics say this will discourage the use of electric bikes, while proponents say it will discourage the use of electric bikes.
A health professional working with me has EV questions. I have questions too, like, why does it hurt when I go like this? Or when I do nothing?
A Brooklyn bagel shop is saving money by baking bagels with energy from batteries. Customers say the bagels are delicious and you can really taste the lithium.
All that and more in this edition of the Clean Energy Show. Also this week, Canada allows 49,000 Chinese EVs under $35,000 in per year at a 6% tariff, much lower than Europe. Starts in about 6 weeks. We'll get to that in just a second. How are you, Brian?
I'm good, and I have a heat pump update.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So I have a cold weather heat pump in my house. We got rid of our gas furnace about 3 years ago. So this is the third winter that I've heated my house with a cold weather
Where does it go?
heat pump. I know.
It's crazy.
And that first winter, it all worked, but there were some technical issues that they had to work on, and the guy had to come back. And so it was working well since then. But last winter, the only problem was the fan outside would sometimes ice up. So there's an outdoor unit that has a vertical fan. And what would happen is the unit has a defrost cycle where to keep the unit defrosted, it would, every once in a while, it shoots the hot, warm liquid out to the unit to defrost it and keep it defrosted. But that would sometimes result in ice buildup. So what happened last winter is about 3 times I had to go out there and open the door of the unit and bang all the ice off because the fan would stop spinning because enough ice had built up. And you get an error message on the thermostat. So, I got to go out and, bang the ice off there. So the idea was to wait and see what happened this winter to see if that was an anomaly or is this going to happen again. And in early January, it happened about 3 times in the space of 2 weeks where I had to go out and bang the ice off. So it's like, okay, well, this is an issue. And my heat pump guy said, well, if it's going to continue to be an issue, you should get some heat tape or a heat cable and wrap it around the fan. And so that's what I did. These are
the
cables.
Actual fan blades or the fan area?
No, the casing. Like it's on the outside of the casing.
Okay.
The sort of wire mesh frame mostly that's on the outside of the fan. But it's all metal and it's all connected. So even though it's kind of on the outside, it seems to transfer enough heat to the kind of slightly inside part. And so it absolutely works. Once I put that up, it's attached with like zip ties and it just wraps around the outside frame of the fan. And it keeps the ice off. It works
Now,
great.
if you're listening to this and you're not familiar with us, we are located in a cold part of Canada and different than where most heat pumps are in the world, in Europe, where it's a little more, it doesn't get down to as cold as it is here. We're in the deep minus 20s, touching minus 30. We'll get into the minus 30s overnight soon. And we don't have a lot. You had trouble finding a guy who would do it. Like, we're not experienced. Heat pumps are complicated. You need an experienced person, and it varies the way they install them, how they will work for you. And you are kind of like a guinea pig, a test case, a boldly man going forward and doing this to see how it works. This should be built into the heat pump, but since most heat pumps aren't made for us, the 5 million, 6 million people on the Canadian prairies, no one cares. The manufacturers currently don't care, and no one's installing heat pumps here, hardly.
And also it seemed related to a software update. I think that's kind of what I suspected from what the heat pump guy told me, is that at a certain point after the first winter, they changed the software. So it was doing the defrost thing more often or something like that, or maybe it didn't even do the defrost cycle before. So because it didn't do it at all in the first winter. And so, I think it was a software change. So it's kind of a fault with the unit, but this is a simple fix. And I had it on 24 hours a day to start with.
Sure, to see if it would work.
To see if it would work. And then I realized, this is working. So now I have it on a timer and it's only on for 12 hours a day now.
All right. Well, it's just a little bit of, what would the heat tape normally be used for? Like icing on your roof or something?
Yes, or pipes. Usually people use them for, sometimes people have houses like in a crawl space or something where The pipes can freeze, so normally you wrap them around a pipe.
Okay. Well, still, I think eventually the heat pumps are getting more efficient. They're working in colder and colder weather, and we'll see things like that properly developed. But it will be the last to get it, like many things in this space. They're not going to make it for the few million people here.
And 3 years later, I think there are more options now. There are more people around here that do install them, although most people keep their gas furnace as a backup.
Right.
As long as you have a fairly new gas furnace, you can make a hybrid system. And when it gets, really cold, then the gas furnace still kicks in. But I went with all electric.
So yeah, everything is electric with you. You've got lots of solar panels on your roof, but still this is costing you money in order to do this bold, I don't want gas move.
Yeah, it is a little bit more expensive than heating the house with gas, but it's the future.
All right. Well, on, was it Thursday or Friday, in between shows, there was a big announcement here in Canada where Brian and I are broadcasting from that the government will allow, they came to an agreement with the Chinese government to allow EVs into our country. This is a big deal. EVs were tariffed at 100% in both the United States and Canada, which means basically no EVs from China. China is making great EVs. They have a large number of different manufacturers. There's a handful of them that are really excelling, but there's something, like 50 that are making EVs. They're doing a very good job. There was like a vacuum cleaner company that decided to make an EV, and they did a really great job. It only took them 4 years, and now they can't make enough of them. And their manufacturing is better. The way they use their supply chains is really efficient, right down from the mining to the shipping. So last week, I mentioned a CBC business panel that they have on our national broadcaster here that happens to be on every time I have my Saturday morning coffee while the rest of the family sleeps. And they used to be pretty naive about EVs, and then they said something very smart that agreed with what we've been saying for years on this show last week. And now they had a different panelist this week who was also talking about EVs, who was, dare I say, enlightened.
Now, you look at Canada, we produce vehicles here, but most of them are not consumed in Canada. And since the pandemic, the average sale price of a new vehicle has gone above $60,000 in Canada, and average used vehicle sale price is above $30,000. Now, these initial amount of vehicles that they're talking about allowing to come into Canada would be new EVs around a $35,000 price point. So this is the first thing that aligns with Canada's needs right now. We've got a household sector that's incredibly cash strapped. And this is a solution to give them a more affordable and highly superior product. I can tell you, our family has been driving electric vehicles for more than 8 years, and we have spent almost nothing on maintenance, on service. There's a fraction of the parts. We charge it overnight for a couple of dollars. I'm talking about a huge financial advantage here. And it made no sense to me that the former government in Canada banned or put 100% tariff on electric vehicles from China in cooperation with what the U.S. was wanting us to do, at the same time as we have a mandate, don't forget, to have zero-emission vehicles be 100% of new sales by 2035, so within 9 years. So we're not producing the type of vehicles right now in Canada that the world wants to buy. That's why we're seeing a big downturn.
So Chinese vehicles are often half the price in China as they are here.
Yeah.
If you compare a typical vehicle, whether you're talking about a compact SUV or maybe a hatchback, the same kind of thing is half as much in China.
Yeah, the affordability here for EVs is very bad. There's very few models. They tend to be more expensive models. And the adoption is just slow here in North America because of that. It's happening more quickly in the rest of the world.
So why is there such a discussion? Why is everyone talking about Chinese EVs? It's not because everyone listens to our show, or I would have gold teeth right now, Brian, but they don't. The fact is that everyone has suddenly decided that EVs are a thing. The Chinese EVs are a political thing, so the chattering class on Twitter and everywhere is talking about it. Something like 6% of a country's GDP is from auto sectors, if you have one. Now, our auto sector is entwined with the United States. So we make some cars, we make some parts, they make some parts, they make some cars. We share them with each other. They're the same companies. And, if you manufacture cars in Canada, 80% of them go elsewhere, mostly to the United States. So it gets tricky if they won't let in EVs, but we let in manufacturers, which is the talk now, that they'll let in Chinese manufacturers and do joint ventures and things like that, which makes sense. But if you can't sell to the United States, it's not really worth it making a factory that will sell just to Canada, the 20% of what you make. So yeah, 3.5% of our auto sales. It's a limited amount. They're only going to be $35,000 Canadian, which is about $25,000 US. So they're just wanting those cheaper EVs so people can adopt who want to. And the premier of Canada's province that has all the auto manufacturing in Ontario, his name is Doug Ford. He is very opposed to this. He realizes this is an existential threat. You and I talked about this. We know it's an existential threat because we know what EVs are. We know what Chinese EVs are, and they are better. They are often superior. The president of Ford knows this, but he's making stupid decisions on not going forward with EVs because of the Trump policies that are coming from that administration right now. But by the time the dust settles on that, it's going to be too late. Surprisingly, there's no big U.S. pushback. I was expecting it by the time we would record today. And so far, nothing, because they're not worried about it. Maybe they think EVs are not a thing and they really are naive about it. But we talk a lot about how China is saving the world from climate change. It is not set out to do that. It's just because they didn't have a gas car manufacturing, so they leap forward to EVs. Why start with last century stuff when you're going to start a manufacturing? That's kind of it. They do a good job with manufacturing. It's cutthroat there, so the competition makes it cheaper, makes it more efficient, makes things people do better. But there's lots of reasons why we shouldn't like China, Brian.
Well, sure. Their human rights record has never been good. But I mean, that goes back to, it was Richard Nixon in the U.S. that opened trade with China back in the 70s. And that was always sort of questionable back then. Like, if that hadn't happened, maybe we could have pushed China more towards democracy. But for whatever reason, it developed into this huge trade relationship, despite them not being a democracy.
Well, there's all kinds of reasons that we forget about. We pump China on the show and we talk about them because we're not a political space. But I think it's time that we occasionally review why some people don't want products from China. But in this current world, we kind of have to say, it doesn't matter what you do, we need trade partners because our closest one is screwing us. So we're kind of doing whatever. But they've had political interference here in multiple elections. There's been hostage diplomacy, the arbitrary and unjustified detention of Canadians, including Kovic and Sapor and all kinds of stuff when we took or the United States wanted to charge one of the CEOs of Huawei, with a crime. So that was detained for years. That's a horrible thing. Made me not want to go to China, made me nervous about that. Repeated and ongoing transnational repression inside Canada, surveillance, intimidation, harassment of Chinese, Canadian, and Hong Kong communities, including threats against family members abroad, espionage and technology theft targeting Canadian universities, researchers, companies with dual U.S. research contributing to PLA modernization and erosion of Canadian economic security, cyber operations against the Canadian government, economic coercion, including the weaponization of trade access to punish Canada for independent policy decisions, which is what just happened, institutional exploitation. And by the way, they were pretty smart about this because it worked. They pitted Western Canada farmers against Eastern Canada manufacturing. Two different things. And, it's argued that, the canola that we were selling to China is just as important as the auto sector is to them. And that really worked well for them. They're not dummies when it comes to this. They understand our country.
Yes. And we live in the breadbasket of Canada, where there is a ton of canola production. And of course, because of the EV tariffs that Canada imposed on China, then China did the same thing with canola. So yeah, canola and EVs are basically the two major bargaining chips here, and China will now accept our canola.
This is a big deal because we are the last, the U.S. auto market, I think, is the biggest in the world, and it's next door to us. Next door, it's since it's integrated, the American companies that we think will all go bankrupt, their Canadian operations, which some of them are moving to the U.S. at Trump's request, what are you going to do? Well, it's time to invite the Chinese in. I mean, Japan, Toyota, Honda, they have manufacturing plants in Ontario. They are employing Canadians. And, I assume that the Korean auto manufacturers are as well. So There is a tendency, though, to go to the U.S. South now, where labor laws are not as strong, and unionization and pensions are an issue. It makes the cost of making these cars higher, so they've avoided that. I just don't know how it's going to work out. I mean, they can have a battery manufacturing plant here. It's going to take years, and maybe Trump will be impeached or gone or dead from insanity. I don't know, but something's going to happen by the time they get these up, and maybe they will be able to sell to the States. Maybe I'll just make battery manufacturing plants here where you can put those batteries into cars, because that's a big deal, and they can use some of our resources for that as well. But there's a lot going on there, a lot going on with this, and it is an existential threat to automotive. But I've argued on Twitter that they deserve it. I think they deserve it. Not the workers in Canada, the manufacturers who knew damn well what they should be doing morally and did not do it.
And do we prop up the auto sector again? The big U.S. automakers were bailed out several years ago. It looks like they'll probably need another bailout. Volkswagen, I suspect, will eventually need a bailout from the German government. It's all a huge, huge mess. But the fact that we haven't been getting low-cost EVs here in Canada has been a real problem, because we need to switch by, as the clip said, by 2035.
Now, these EVs will be a lot more expensive in Canada. They won't be half as much. They won't be anywhere near half as much, but they'll be a little bit more competitive, we expect, than the American models. And there'll be more variety, which brings more people into the market to buy them. There's going to be a lot of distrust. It's going to take, Korean manufacturers took 20 years almost to build up trust.
Yeah.
And, to be fair, their quality wasn't great at first. Now, we think that the Chinese quality is good, the safety and the tech is all superior, but they have to be around for a while for you to know that the longevity is quality. So we can't speak to that for sure yet, because they've only been around for a couple of years or so.
And there's still all kinds of people who just scoff at Hyundai and Kia because they haven't been paying attention. That Hyundai and Kia caught up years and years ago, and yet people still dismiss them, which I think is hilarious. Also, in general, it's kind of vaguely like when the Japanese entered North America in the 1970s. And I was around then. I was very young, but I kind of vaguely remember similar kinds of arguments. There was concern about protecting the North American auto industry. The Japanese are going to come in and they're going to, decimate everybody. They didn't decimate everybody, but they did eventually take a major piece of the market.
Now, I was at a family event 10, 12, 13 years ago, and some old guy said, you can't buy Japanese. You'll never get a part for it. Because, assumably it has to come over by rowboat from Japan, and they don't speak English, and you'll never, it's such an absurd thing. Like, I can buy something from Temu from China. I try not to, but occasionally there's something. And it takes a couple of weeks, at worst, but to come actually from China. But the point is, they make the parts in North America for distribution in North America. They're not stupid. It's not, if you do need a part.
Parts were probably an issue for Japanese cars briefly in like the early 1970s.
Yeah, but it's a different world now when it comes to shipping and transporting stuff. Brian, I had a series of medical appointments, big ones, this past week. And to my surprise, stuff from our show comes up. And for one thing, people are always impressed that I'm a podcaster. Like, why is that impressive? And we do have an impressive show here that is quite successful over 6 years. But you don't know that. Every jackass has a podcast now. It's not a badge of honor necessarily. I guess you should say I have a successful podcast instead of saying I have a podcast. But one of the medical professionals, I won't be specific about it, wanted to know more, and I had to do a walking test for 6 minutes down a long corridor. And so we talked about EVs. She said, I have questions. My husband and I were thinking about it, so I have questions, and I'm going to answer those later on in the show. But they were almost identical to all the questions that we normally get. And there is misinformation around and sort of bias against certain things. And my heart rate was monitored during this test, and it may have gone up a couple of times. I blamed it on the questions. The second medical professional that I saw as well is somebody I've worked with in the past and gotten to know quite well. And she's at a new place and is now treating me there. And I found out that her husband actually works at the refinery down the street, because the refinery came up. I don't know. We're talking vegetables, because I need to eat more vegetables. How the garden is questionable now. And she said her husband is thinking about retiring, but she joked that everyone who retires from there dies in 1 year. And
that's a hilarious joke.
I don't think she quite knew the context of what we know about emissions from that place and the dangers they pose. So that was halting for me, that I was, what's going on there? Are those people safe? Like when I met some of them during the book launch about a year and a half ago, I was thinking, are these guys going to be okay? Like, am I okay? Are they okay? Like, I live near there. They get it no matter what the wind direction is. And I worry about that. But they do, she said the refinery's been good to their family, of course. Now, that's the truth about all people who work in the oil industry. It is uplifts families and gives them a good life. And that's the problem with this, the fear, the threat from electrifying transportation.
Yeah, and there's a thing called motivated reasoning, which means that if you've, for instance, gotten a whole bunch of money from a certain profession or industry, you're bound to think more favorably about that industry.
Yeah. So we'll get into some of her questions later, and I think it's a good review because we have people coming to the show all the time who maybe don't know the things that we've talked about, and it's great to sort of educate people. But it's also daunting because there's so much information about EVs and things are a little bit different. You do have to educate yourself. And she said she's not really the type of person who wants to adopt new technology. And you know what?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because that's fine. But it's the young people that will mostly adopt it. And that's a good thing.
All right. So this is from Canary Media. Portable batteries have been deployed at a Brooklyn bagel shop and other businesses. And I love stories like this because I love it when energy utilities think outside of the box and think about doing things differently. And I also love it when they pay for the stuff. So this is one of those programs where the utility, this is a startup called David Energy, they're buying the batteries and giving them to different businesses in New York to help them reduce the peak demand charges that often happen, for everybody. Most places have peak demand charges early in the morning, later in the day, and it can really increase your electrical bill. But guess what? If you have any kind of a home battery, then you can get rid of those peak charges by using the battery when the electricity is most expensive to buy from the grid. So this particular example, so this is a bagel shop in Brooklyn, and they have an oven called the Baconator. I don't know if that's the official brand name.
Isn't that a Wendy's burger? Come on. It's probably trademarked.
But this is not for the bagels. This is for cooking some of the meat that they have. And these are portable batteries that are kind of like roller suitcases, like about the size of a roller bag that you would take on an airplane. And so this particular bagel shop has 3 of these, and they're directly connected to the appliances that they use, like an oven, refrigerator, or whatever. And there's software, and the utility runs the software that decides when the batteries are charged up and when it's discharged. But, the net result is like this is always a win-win for everybody. It's always better for a utility to have more options, and they're trying to offer the lowest price to their customers. They're also working towards a goal of eventually being 100% clean energy. And, this is a way to do this. So these kind of demand charges, sometimes they can make up as much as half of your electrical bill. And it's not necessarily a gigantic savings. So this one example, like maybe $80 a month at one particular shop. But if you've got, 10 different locations, well, that's, $10,000 a year. Like it really does add up. And we know that, restaurants, food businesses, they're always very low margin businesses. So, any way you can increase the efficiency and save a little bit of money like that is always a good thing. So David Energy has deployed these plug-in batteries at about 50 locations. So this is about 500 kilowatt hours. This is a bit of a pilot project. They're going to kind of see how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're portable. So you can literally just unplug them and move them somewhere else if you want to do that. They decided to do that rather than, a full-blown installation tends to be a bit more expensive and more complicated.
So how would you explain that to my medical professional who's new to the show, who doesn't know anything about this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for one thing, we don't have demand pricing here for electricity.
So what is demand pricing? Let's start with that and the reasons for it.
Yeah, so we all know that energy use peaks at certain times of the day. So there's always certain times of the day where everyone gets up in the morning and, plugs in their coffee makers and makes their coffee and gets ready for work. That's when there's a big, big drain on the grid. So to kind of balance that out, you often pay more money. If you've got a smart meter, if you're in a place that does this, the electricity just costs more at certain times of the day. And then usually overnight is the cheapest. So overnight, that's when you would charge up your home storage battery if you have one.
Right. And the biggest demand spike is when people get home for work. It's kind of like 4 to 7 p.m., depending on where you live.
Yep.
In California, for example, everyone's turning down the air conditioner. So that's a big draw on the grid. You're turning on ovens. You're turning on sometimes washing machines, computers, TVs, all that stuff uses power now. And the grid, they spend a lot of money to meet that one time that needs extra electricity. So it's very expensive for the power grids to do that, to have that stuff ready to go because you don't want the grid to collapse.
Yeah, and at 5 p.m., you're probably still heating and cooling your office buildings as well. So
right.
There's
an overlap.
It's the there's going to be an overlap there.
And also factories and businesses like that. So what the power grids do most places, and they will do here because they're moving towards that here slowly as they install new meters, is to charge more for the high demand parts so that you use less. And right now, people in Saskatchewan, where we live, the province in Canada, we get a rebate from our power utility that's government run, supposedly arm's length, but it doesn't seem that way. We get participate in programs where we charge at night and they pay us money to see if that will change our behavior. So I get, all kinds of money for doing that, and it offsets a lot of my electricity, which is already pretty low for my EV as it is. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you're lucky enough to live in a place, like some places have overnight electricity that's as low as like 1 cent per kilowatt hour.
And some of them
can charge
are talking about doing that for electric cars, even cheaper for electric cars to get electric cars to charge overnight.
Yeah.
So then you're driving for nothing. You're driving for peanuts.
It's like $1 maybe to charge your car when you do it like that. It's absolutely insane. I would love that. There was another detail from the article I thought was fun. So they're deploying these portable batteries at different businesses, fast food restaurants, a day spa. And one of them is a dog grooming store where the battery is hooked up to a fur drying machine.
Really?
Yeah. And
I got to get me one of those when I come out of the shower.
Yeah. And, what can I say? We're pretty ridiculous here in North America with our excessive energy use. I mean, a fur drying machine. But hey, if you can run it cleanly off a battery, that's better.
So yeah, they charge up these batteries at night. They pay a little bit for the electricity, and they save money by using the batteries when the electricity from the grid is expensive. So they don't use it. They use the cheap battery. It's like, buying cheap milk at the store that's on clearance and freezing it and then using it. I don't know. There's an analogy there somewhere, but it's coming. Yeah, it's coming. This sort of thing is coming.
And it saves their customers money. It makes their bills lower, and that makes their customers happy, and that makes them get more customers.
There was a great feature in the New York Times this weekend about off-grid places in Africa that are getting batteries. They're renting batteries. There's like a central place in the village that charges them with solar. Then you take these portable batteries that are about the size of a bread maker or something. You carry them back. They're heavy, but you carry them back to your house and they charge, stuff. And there was a barber shop which was featured. And not only is he running the clippers, but everybody comes and spends 30 cents to charge their phones.
Yeah.
The equivalent of about 30 cents to charge their phones. So there was like 20 phones all charging on different cables from this guy as a service. And that's the way things are in off-grid Africa, or places that have unreliable electricity grids, which are often down, which is a lot of places. And I think even South Africa is like that. The electricity is not reliable there. All right, Brian, this is part one of my health professional EV questions and thoughts. One of these questions that she asked was, why not harness wind power in the car? Like put a tunnel in it to harvest the wind. I was with you once at a mall. We were looking at a Tesla when we had that exact question from a boomer. Yeah. And first of all, My answer is, like, don't you think that, there's hundreds of thousands of engineers working on it. Do you think that you just sort of let this go? Like they just slipped?
Yeah.
But it is a frequent question we get. And also we get the question of why not put solar panels on the car?
Yeah.
And the answer to the solar panels is the solar panels on a car don't have a lot of space and you have to park it in the sun. And it's better to put them on your house if you have a house and charge your car that way because you can get a lot more power that way. However, there is a car company or a new startup that has been making one for years and years, and they've been testing it around the States now, but it's only 3 wheels. It looks funny.
Yeah.
It looks like it's one of those university test cars. It can be done. It has to be ultra efficient in order to use the electricity from the sun, and it can be charged a little bit too, but it's and if it's cloudy, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah, I believe that's the Aptera, and it's meant to be super ultra efficient, and it probably could generate enough energy from the solar panels as long as you didn't, do a ton of driving. Best case scenario usually would be to have some solar panels on your car, and it would maybe add, a couple of miles of range per day, and, just accept that that's all you're going to get.
So if you're listening to this and you're wondering why a wind turbine on a car can't be harnessed, I'm going to explain it to you with the help of the internet. Yeah, because it has been asked so many times. So, using a wind turbine on a moving electric vehicle to charge its battery is physically impossible because it creates a net energy loss, essentially acting as a very expensive and inefficient brake.
Yeah.
So, we have brakes on cars, our EVs now, a lot of people don't know this, that actually make electricity, which is why an electric car in the city does better than it does the highway. It's one of the reasons why it does better, because it generates its own electricity as you brake. In fact, my brakes never got used and I had to pay money to repair them.
Yeah.
And now I have to hit the brakes really hard every 2 weeks to make sure my brakes don't rust because they never get used.
Yes. Electric cars have regenerative braking, but that's energy that otherwise would have been lost because you only use that regenerative braking when you need to slow the car down.
The free lunch paradox, Brian. The most important point for a novice is that the wind hitting a moving car isn't free natural wind. It's resistance created by the car's own movement. Creating the wind to reach 60 miles per hour, 100 kilometers an hour roughly, the EV's battery must spend energy to push through the air. The turbine's cost, a turbine works by catching that air, which creates a massive amount of aerodynamic drag. The math. Because of physics, the battery will always have to work harder to overcome this new drag than the turbine can ever produce in electricity. The 59% hard limit, Betts's law, even if we had a perfect turbine that was 100% efficient, it could never really be 100% efficient. Betts's law of physics dictates that a wind turbine can capture a maximum of 59.3% of the kinetic energy in the wind. Practical losses in the real world, most turbines only reach 35 to 45% efficiency, which is fine. It's better than solar most cases. There's conversion waste. You also lose energy when converting that spinning motion into electricity and then storing it in the battery. It's like a leaky loop. Imagine a podcast listener trying to charge their phone by plugging into a portable power bank while the same power bank is being charged by the phone itself. So that it's not going to be a perfect loop because you're going to have energy losses in that. It's why we won't get into because that's more technical. I want to avoid technical things. In every step, moving the car, creating wind, spinning the turbine, charging the battery, energy is lost as heat and sound. I don't understand the sound part. A lot of engineers listen to this show, and a lot of them are going, yeah. But the sound part, you'll have to tell me about. The net result is that you are draining the battery faster to make the car move than the turbine attached to the car is putting back in. And it'd be a perpetual motion machine, which wouldn't that be cool? If that would work, because no one would have gas cars anymore because it would be free to drive an EV. When wind harvesting does work, there is one exception. If the car is parked and a natural external wind is blowing, the turbine on a car that pops up like some sort of gadgety thing and could technically charge the battery that way. The turbine would need to be massive, though, to provide a meaningful charge, making it impractical for a standard passenger car. For moving vehicles, though, engineers instead focus on regenerative braking, which recovers energy from the car's existing momentum when it needs to slow down rather than fighting against its motion while it tries to drive. So, yeah, there you have it. Otherwise, we'd be doing it.
And the other thing we've seen is, and not commercially, but sometimes people will have a deploying solar panels from their car. Like you could have several solar panels like in the bed of your truck that fold out once you're parked. And especially if you're camping or something, you could get a fairly large solar array that kind of folds out from your car. But of course, that only works when it's stopped, like the wind turbine.
Tesla said they might do that with the Cybertruck, and they never did. It is possible, and some people who are, have way too much time and way too much knowledge do try things like that.
Yeah.
My problem when camping just by buying my RV with solar was that you always park in high trees.
Oh,
so you don't always get a lot of sunlight there as you do in the open here.
Yeah, and solar panels do work in the shade, but obviously they don't work as well. All right, from Electrek, strict new e-bike rules in New Jersey. This is kind of a big deal. I was surprised by this. A new e-bike law this week effectively lumps everything with a motor and two wheels into a single category, scrapping the widely accepted 3-class system for regulating street-legal electric bikes. So this means that pedal assist e-bikes, which you and I have, just simple bikes with an electric motor and a battery, throttle bikes, high-powered e-moto style machines are now treated the same under the state law. So that means you need a license and insurance now in New Jersey. It doesn't take effect for another year, but this is a big deal. You'll need a driver's license, first of all, to drive one of these electric bikes. These are standard electric bikes that you would buy from your local bike store.
Well, let's break it down. A throttle bike is a bike that you don't pedal. You just set your feet on a little post thingy, and you push a button or a lever, and it jets you through the streets like that. My bike has that, but it also has pedal assist. It has both. So there is pedal assist that had different rules, and the throttle only ones had that. So they're lumping them all into the same class now. Yeah,
and you'll need regular driver's license, so you won't need a specific like motorcycle license or something like that. If you're 15 to 17 years old without a driver's license, you'll have the option of obtaining an electric bike-specific license, which is presumably something they'll have to create. I don't think that exists now.
You can't get a driver's license till you're 18 in New Jersey? They seem a little bit overprotective there.
That I'm not sure if that's the case, but that's what it implies by what it's written there.
Yeah.
So the governor pointed to several recent fatal crashes involving e-bikes, and we know this does happen, as the motivation behind the law, saying the state's rules hadn't been updated in 6 years despite rapidly increasing e-bike use. This law has passed. It passed both chambers earlier this month. And so it's not going to take effect for another year. The low-speed rental programs like the City Bike, like a lot of cities have those sort of mass e-bike rental things, those are so far going to be exempt. But otherwise, this is a pretty harsh restriction. And I could certainly see people not bothering with an e-bike, which is too bad because e-bikes are an excellent solution to, getting rid of car pollution.
Well, first of all, my digital assistant tells me that the driver's age in New Jersey is in fact 18 to get a driver's license.
Really?
You can get a learner's at 16. So you've got 2 years of purgatory there before you can actually get a full-on driver's license.
Yeah.
So I don't know, are New Jersey drivers bad? Is it incredibly dangerous to drive in New Jersey? These are things I can't tell you, but I wonder.
And we now have graduated licenses here as well. So when you and I were kids, you could just get a license at 16 and it was a full-on license. But it is a sort of a graduated system now.
Yeah.
Where there is sort of some probationary period. So, maybe it's
you can't listen to the radio. My daughter just is now able to listen to the radio after a couple of years or something. And that was and I realized because of her concentration habits that maybe that's not a good thing, but she's coming home with news stories because I have it on the public broadcaster, and we're discussing that now, which is kind of weird, but anyway, that is too bad for New Jersey, I guess. But I mean, are people dying on e-bikes there? Are they driving over pedestrians? Are old ladies getting hit on the sidewalk? What's going on? What's the problem that's getting solved is my question.
Yeah, and we know that from previous reporting from New York State that there has definitely been people dying in, pedestrians getting hit by people going quite quickly on an e-bike. So it does happen, but of course these figures all dwarf, automobile accidents. This is a, 1/1000th of what happens with cars. And also just because of the climate crisis that we're in, should, the laws maybe do have to change. Like there needs to be certain regulations probably, but I don't know. This seems pretty harsh.
All right, let's talk about why EVs are different to buy. And they are. I put like 2 months. My first EV I bought, my Nissan Leaf from across the country because they were abundant and cheap for used ones in Quebec.
Yeah, so I've been driving electric for 6 years now, but you even longer, right?
Yeah, I mean, my car just turned 13 years old now, the Leaf, and I bought it when it was 5 years old. So do the math. That's 8 years.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Like I only expected it to last 5 years to pay for itself. Gas prices shot up, so it paid for itself in even less time because I was driving an SUV that my son now drives temporarily. We had it around for camping, but we used it as our second city car to drive the kids to various things and do my own chores and work things. So it saved a lot of money because that thing was bigger and used premium gas, and then we got the Leaf, and I'm just so happy with it. Even now, I'm still happy with it. Like, it's just great. I want it to live forever, and I know it won't, but it's going strong. If you buy an EV and you think you might want to buy one, and say you're loyal to a brand, whether it's VW, Chevy, or Toyota, whatever it is, whatever brand, if you're loyal, a lot of people are loyal to their car brands and they want to stick with that. I would join a Facebook group, and I hate Facebook because it's, ruining the world for lots of reasons. People are, you know what? I found out that it switched me to a different account on Facebook, and I realized I had some sort of generic account that I never used. It has nothing about me. It has no friends. It switched me to that account, or maybe I clicked a button or something. I don't know how, but it was there, and it started, everything in my feed was political. It was either left wing or right wing because I wanted to put me in one of the two camps and then radicalize me.
Yeah.
And that's just because it knows that's where the engagement is. And after I poo-pooed all those, it was said, well, maybe it's a science nerd. Here's a NASA post. And it's just, it just goes to prove what they're doing and what they thrive on. And it's wrecking the world horribly and making a lot of people stupid. Anyway, if you are thinking about an EV, there are great Facebook groups that you can join. And they have, if you ask a question, you'll get an answer in 30 seconds because there's everybody who owns one of those vehicles. Say it's a Toyota, whatever their EV is now, the BZ.
BZ4X.
The BZ, it's just the BZ now for 2026. This model year. So then you would join that group and you would find out everyone's problem with their EVs. But you would also know what the solutions are because the very smart people are on there. Because a lot of the people who have bought EVs up to now, they're smart.
Yeah.
They were able to do a lot of research, and not everybody, if you don't do research, you might run into problems. Because I've known people around here who have long commutes. This woman that I talked to as a medical person has a half-hour commute. But some people have 1 or 2 hour commutes, and they think, well, I'm going to need to save gas. I'm going to buy an EV. So I've got 200-kilometer commute every day. I'm going to buy a car that has, 280 kilometers range or something like that. It's just not meeting their needs because of reasons I'll get into here. But you need to, you'll learn every problem about them. And some of the new EVs do have problems. They have issues that frustrate people because they're only in their first model year or two for some of these models, like the Toyota one. And like the Toyota one, the wheels were falling off. They had to recall them after 6 weeks, which is just sad. They only made like a handful of them, and they were still having that basic problem of keeping the wheels on. It had nothing to do with it being an EV. It had everything to do with rushing it out at Toyota. So a highway range is less than city range. It's the reverse of your combustion car of gas. You get better highway range. So it is the reverse of that. And there are reasons for that.
Yeah.
Cars take a bigger hit on efficiency. They are very efficient. Their EVs are like 85, 90% efficient of the energy they use. Gas cars are 20 to 25, maybe a bit more, depending on the car, efficient. So they waste a lot of their energy. So when you hit a headwind in a gas car, it's already inefficient, so you don't notice the hit as much. Yeah. But in an EV, in winds, it can be reducing your range. So if you have a cold weather and it's windy, then you're in trouble on the highway. If you need to have a lot more range, especially around here. So I'm talking, this is kind of like the worst case scenario in the world is us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we have the relatively the least charging infrastructure, but I'll get to that in a second.
And I'll point out that when you buy a gas car, it always tells you the highway mileage and the city mileage. So it might be 40 miles per gallon on the highway, 20 in the city or whatever. With EVs, we just get one number, and it's up to you to sort of figure out that, oh yeah, on the highway, it's going to be less than that number, but in the city, it might be more than that number.
But there are good resources online that will tell you what it will get on the highway in cold weather, what it'll get in warm weather, and so on. Remember, the battery is used to heating the cabin, and the cabin, when a heater with electric, it's like 7 blow dryers. It's a lot of energy to heat that cabin. Now, in cold weather, when it's mid-minus 30s here, which isn't too often, thankfully, my heater was going full on for like an hour at 7,000 watts to heat the cabin. And you're sitting around, I was waiting for my wife at a store or something, it's using 7,000 watts, which is fine because it has 400 kilometers range, and I'll plug it in when I get home, and there's no worry about that. But you are using a lot, and only after like an hour did it go down to like 5,000, 4,000. So it took a long time in extremely cold weather to do that.
Yeah, my electric cars use way more electricity. We have to plug them in, make sure we plug them in every night because you should, best practices.
You're supposed to. They tell you to.
When it's the winter.
Because it heats the battery, by the way. It does heat the battery.
But in the summer, we can go, many days without bothering to plug them in.
Same here. So yeah, what happens in a gas car, you have a block heater, which warms the engine oil so that it doesn't become a solid. It needs to be liquefied. So you have that. And in a electric car, if you plug it in, it will heat the battery. It will heat the battery. It will keep the battery at minus 17 is kind of the range for lithium ion batteries, the working range. So it heats it to keep it at minus 17 or warmer. That's different with every car, but that's kind of what it is with our cars. And a sodium ion battery, which is a new type of battery that's coming from China, the sodium is replacing the lithium. There's a little less energy dense, so you can't have really long range cars in the 700 or 800 kilometer range, but you can have 500 kilometer range cars. And they work down to minus 40. So you wouldn't even have to heat it until it hit minus 40, which is great, which is fantastic. And they do lose a little bit of their range, but it's only like 10 or 12%. It's just a little bit that would barely be noticeable because, gas cars lose range in cold weather too, and up to 25% depending on what's going on. So I always recommend buy more range than you think you need wherever you are because batteries will last the life of the car. That's another question that's very frequently asked. They will last longer than the car. In fact, when the car dies in say 25 years, you can take that battery and still use it for something. Yeah. Somebody will pay $1,000 to use it as the cells to either recycle it or to put it into a battery backup system at a bagel shop or a dog fur warmer.
Yeah. It just won't have all of the capacity that it had when it was new. It does lose some capacity as it ages.
So the capacity you have may go down as much as 5% after 1 year. A lot of cars are better than that now, but you want to plan on that to have more range than you think you need. And then it slowly goes down after that. It's usually a slower pace. Prepare to miss your oil change guy. If you're in love with your oil change guy, you're gonna have some heartbreak here because I think it's worth the price of admission just not to get an oil change. God, I hate oil changes.
Yeah.
And the people there trying to sell you on filters and things that electric cars don't need. Electric cars have something like 20 moving parts compared to 2,000. Yeah. This is something we haven't talked about for years, but that is with less moving parts. Moving part means breakdown possibility. Yep.
Yeah, you need to switch your wipers, and electric cars do usually have an air filter, like a cabin air filter, but not an air filter for the engine because there is no engine.
Tires are important for range, so they make them very efficient for range, which means they may not be great for other things like wet weather or in some cases. I got some great tires for my car when I replaced them, and they didn't compromise on range. They work very well, even in the wintertime. And electric cars are heavier, so I never have a problem with traction. But I live on a plowed street, so maybe I'm special that way. Cold and wind affect range in electric cars more than they do. There's 3 core concepts here: waste heat, battery chemistry, and aerodynamic efficiency. The free heat advantage of gas cars, the biggest reason EVs lose more range in the cold is how they keep the cabin warm. Gasoline vehicles, they have all these moving parts in the engine that creates friction, steel against steel, and the oil is supposed to buffer that, but it creates a lot of stuff, and it converts only 20% of its fuel and energy into motion. The other energy, the other 80% is wasted as heat. In winter, this waste heat is pumped into the cabin for free, so that's great. But you also have to wait for it. You have to wait for that friction to heat it up, whereas an electric car is like flipping a switch, and as soon as those the air vents in the car heat up after about, 1 or 2 minutes at most. It's warm air in your face. It's very quick, even on the coldest of days, which is another great thing. Plus, you can heat up your car in the garage without opening the door. There's no carbon monoxide involved. You put it in your living room if you want and heat it up there. EV motors are highly efficient, 85 to 90% or more, meaning they produce very little waste heat. To stay warm, EVs must use their battery to run a dedicated heater, which directly steals miles from your driving range. So that's true even if it's a little bit cold.
But I also love when you pointed out some time ago on the podcast, again, our cold weather situation here. You might be in a case where you're stuck in a blizzard, it's minus 30, you're stuck in a snowdrift. The heated seats in your electric car can literally last for days if you have any real charge.
2 weeks. I think we did a calculation of 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I got that question from my medical professional. What happens if you're stuck in a blizzard or somewhere?
Yeah.
And that is a frequent question because people remember the negative things.
Yeah.
And that's just human nature, and we have to work against that with knowledge. Basically, a gas car idles until your gas is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. An electric car you'll heat the cabin until the heater's gone. So if you're using an average of, say, 3 kilowatts over time, and you have a 100 kilowatt battery, you do the math, you divide 100 by 3, and that's how many hours the heater will last.
Yeah. So if you're in a gas car and you're stuck in a snowdrift, in a blizzard, what they recommend is you run the engine for, 5 minutes or something to heat up the cabin, and then you turn it off again. You have to be careful about the carbon monoxide emissions. Maybe the tailpipe is covered with snow or something that could lead to noxious fumes getting into the cabin, so you have to worry about that. But yes, every 5 minutes, and then you shut it off for 20 or something like that. If you're
I'd be
freezing.
terrified of it not starting after a while.
Which is a problem. But in an EV in that situation, you would put the heated electric seats on, and that should keep you from freezing to death.
Yes, it's not pleasant, but it will keep you alive for 2 weeks. So
yeah. Let's try that as an experiment sometime.
Oh, I think we'll leave that to Mr. Beast or somebody. Yeah, and when you start an EV, people ask, do EVs start? Well, there's nothing to start.
Yeah.
And you're turning on a computer.
Yeah.
And it's like turning on a cell phone outside. Well, it just powers up as long as the battery's working. And of course, the batteries work. They're massive. They're not little. In a gas car, you have to crank an engine with a tiny battery and hope that you get it right, or you only have, 1 or 2 shots at it before your battery dies. And I've been here in minus 42 and even less. Even this year, I've seen some people getting their cars boosted, and I'm driving by them and, no problems for me.
I have had it where my cell phone has gotten so cold. If you keep it in an outside pocket, and I used to walk to work, and if it's minus 30 and it's in an outside pocket, you can try and use it and it will not work because it's too frozen. But the car battery, it's so much bigger. It holds so much more heat. It's not the same.
So cold temperatures cause lithium ions to move more slowly through the battery's liquid electrolyte. And this makes it harder for the batteries to release energy. So that reduces the available range when it's cold. Now, batteries can really heat their batteries themselves up with their own energy. If you're a Tesla and you're going to charge, you want a warm battery, and you tell it you set a thing up in your app on your car, and you tell it you're going to city A, and it will stop here and here if it needs to, and then will preheat the batteries just before it gets there. Sometimes it spends an hour doing it, but it will make sure that it heats the battery. So it's capable of heating itself with its own energy. Yeah, so the comfort zone of batteries is usually between 20 and 40 degrees Celsius. That's lithium. But again, if this is your stopping point, you makes you not want to get an electric car, well, that's solved because sodium-ion batteries are coming. They're already in cars in China, and they will make their way here as necessary. And they would be perfect for our climate. And there is cold climates in China as well. So hopefully, if they start making those, that they can offer. You might be able to go to Toyota or somewhere and say, I want the sodium battery with my car. And I'm checking it off on my list, because it will work without heating it.
Just like you could sometimes choose like a V6 or a V8 in your car.
Right. Yeah, it's just an option that you might be able to tick off in the future. Because an EV uses so little energy to move under ideal conditions, any outside force, like a strong headwind, represents a much larger percentage of its total energy budget, because it's efficient. That's hard to wrap your head around, but think about it for a while. There's hidden losses in gas cars. In a gas vehicle, massive internal energy losses like heat and friction already dwarf the energy needed to overcome wind because you're already losing so much to other things, you don't notice it as much. A 10-mile-per-hour headwind might increase a gas car's consumption slightly, but in an EV, it can reduce the range by as much as 20% because those EVs are so efficient. So any force against it is a big efficiency loss. All EVs are different. Some charge slow on the highway when it's cold. Some prepare for it, like I just mentioned, by preheating the battery. So there is lots of information. And, it may not be for this person or other people like her to maybe get an EV, especially in our cold climate, because you do have to learn about things. And I've noticed, a lot of people who bought EVs were early adopters, but now there's a lot of people buying them and they haven't done their research and they're going on these forums saying, I didn't know this. Well, yeah. It's a basic thing. And YouTube's your friend. You can watch YouTube videos. I couldn't find any, but I have seen in the past great primers for EV owners, first-time owners, and they're there. I just couldn't find one to mention today. So this is other question she asked. Is a EV good for the environment, even with a coal-heavy factor in our power grid? Brian, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I don't have any of the articles in front of me, but we've definitely talked about these before, where people have done studies looking at the electrical grid across North America. And of course, the grid can be more dirty in certain places, have more coal on the grid. Other places have clean hydropower. But the studies that have been done for, say, North America conclude that in terms of emissions, EVs are always going to be cleaner than a gas car because you'd maybe have to have a 100% coal-powered grid for that EV to then suddenly be a worse choice. But even then, I think it would be kind of a wash and kind of about the same.
It is, yeah. There's been some studies saying that even if it was 100% coal, it's better. It just takes longer to pay off. Yeah. You have to own it for more years for it to pay off, but it does pay off after a few years.
Yeah. And of course, it does take sometimes carbon to build the electric cars. But again, there's a carbon footprint to building all cars. It's better to have one that's electric, which eventually will not have a footprint because eventually that debt gets paid off.
And the batteries do not go to the landfill. Any more than $1,000 bill goes to the landfill. They're valuable, and recycling them is now virtually 100%. Like the critical minerals in them can be reused and put into a new battery that's even better than the battery because the battery technology is always improving. So that's a great thing. And they just started that, but they're so good at it already. They're very, very good at recycling lithium-ion batteries. And they're using the heat just from its own chemical processes in order to separate the minerals. So how long does the battery last? The battery lasts as long as the car or longer than the car, more likely longer than the car. So yeah, that's not an issue. You could, like the range goes down, maybe in 15 years you have 70% of the range, and that's not good enough for, a high school student or somebody else, 15-year-old car, and that might be perfectly fine for them as well.
Now, every once in a while you do hear, EV batteries typically have like about an 8-year warranty, and again, people tend to remember the negative stories and they'll be, I heard about some guy who needed to get his battery replaced in a car. And it has happened, but typically it happens in that first 8 years when it's under warranty.
Yeah, it's a defect, and that's why the battery warranty lasts that long. And the warranties do warranty against a certain amount of loss of the battery range. How long does it take to charge? You get about 7 kilometers an hour if you plug it into a normal household outlet here in North America. In the summer, that's less. In the winter, that's less because a little bit might go to the block heater in the car, which is like 300 watts. So it might charge a bit slower. But, I find my car charges pretty fast. It doesn't, on one of my cars is charged on the normal household outlet because it's got low range anyway. The other car uses higher outlet. And I recommend that for people around here in cold weather because if you get like a dryer type connection, and it costs money to do this, but my car company actually paid for it. If you get that connection to a charger in your driveway or garage, you can preheat the car. If you don't have that, you'll use some of the battery. You'll charge it up to whatever percent overnight, and then you'll actually use some of that battery to heat the car if you're leaving in cold weather in the morning, or in some cases, hot weather. So yeah, I would recommend that. People always ask me, how long does it take to charge? I don't know because I plug it in and it's charged, next time I use it, whether it's 2 hours from now. I'm usually only using like a couple of hours of charging in a day and maybe a little bit more in the winter, but maybe it's 4 hours in a very cold weather. And you don't notice it because you plug it in at night, and it just happens. Like your car is not at zero when you're plugging it in either. It's got range to go wherever you need to go.
If you live in an apartment, it's always a different issue if you can't put in your own plug or your own 240 volt plug, So there are issues if you don't own your own house and have your own driveway. But, those problems have been solved by different people as well, doing different things, or just going to the fast charger all the time.
Charging fast on road trips, this is my last tip, Ryan. Charging fast on road trips costs more than charging at home. Yeah. And Tesla, she said that her son is into electric cars, and he has friends with a Tesla, and one loves it and one hates it. And I trying to figure out why the one hated it. And I thought the only person I ever knew with a Tesla who hated it was a guy I heard about who didn't like, because he traveled across the country all the time, how much the Tesla charging. And it has really creeped up to be almost as much as gas, which is too bad. But that's what Tesla's doing. And I use third-party chargers, which are half as much sometimes, depending on the situation. But that's something to know as well. Charging at home, cheap.
My most expensive charging on the highway has been about $40, which is still cheaper than gas. But it's unfortunate that it's creeped up
Mine's
that much.
$25. I hit $25 once.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually you pay for the speed of the charging sometimes too. So if you have a really fast charging car, it costs more.
Yeah, you're paying for the convenience of something that can charge, as much as 250 kilowatts. All right, if you'd like to contact us, please drop us a line, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, and you can always leave us a voicemail, speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow.
The Clean Energy Show podcast is made possible by listeners who support us on Patreon. Thank you to everyone who's doing that. We really appreciate it. Shout out to one of our new members, Joe Thorsheim, whose name I've said wrong on the show when I gave him a shout out, so I wanted to correct that. He didn't send me a complaint. I caught it myself. Joe, sorry about that. Visit patreon.com/cleanenergypod and support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. All you people doing that, you're making this show happen. You get ad-free episodes, access to the Discord, discounts at our merch store, early access to the episodes every week, behind-the-scenes materials, and some private updates. Thank you credits on our video podcast when that comes out. A verbal shout-out once a month on our audio podcast, depending on the level at which you support us. Coming up next, the lightning round. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Solar generation in the world is expected to grow by 50% in the next 2 years. It's already big. It's already on fire. It's not slowing down, Brian. That was reported on Heat Map News. Can't stop solar. Much as you want to tout other forms of renewables, solar just can't be stopped because of economics and ease of use. Ireland is decommissioning its oldest wind farm to make way for new tech. And the efficiency of the new tech, the new wind turbines, is way better. Here's an example. Just one of the new wind turbines, just one of them will generate more than the entire farm did before it. The entire 21 turbine farm. And so there's a new wind turbine farm beside this old wind turbine farm, and they want to expand it. So they're taking down the old one in Ireland, which was so old that one turbine now does the work of the whole farm. So that's kind of where, we expect that somewhat in solar, but it's in wind. Over the last 25 years, it has really improved. Pakistan solar update. Pakistan has imported 51 gigawatts of solar. Think of a gigawatt as a power plant worth, whether it's coal or nuclear. It has deployed so far 27 to 33 gigawatts of that power. Now, the power that is deployed by Pakistan in the grid, you usually think of most solar going into big wind farms in the desert, only 0.8 gigawatts. All of it has been distributed. All of it has been people saying, I want power. My power goes out all the time. I'm going to go buy these solar panels and hook them up. No red tape, which may be a bad thing, may be a good thing, but it seems to not be killing people. And they're just doing it. They're just doing it because of democracy. And that's one of the great things about solar is that it's very democratic when it comes to energy production. For instance, I'm powering my car, not with the oil industry, but with the solar panels on my roof, which I put on myself. Well, I hired somebody to put them on. And historic cold snap is coming to Texas, the U.S. Southeast, and the Carolinas in the next couple of weeks. So look out. We're probably going to be talking about it because of power disruptions and something not working.
Well, and we know this happened a couple of years ago in Texas with some big cold snap weather that knocked out some of their power. So we'll see what happens this time.
Oh, it's time for a CES Fast Fact. China consumed twice the electricity as the United States in 2025. Twice, says Bloomberg. Oh, it's time for another one. 8 of the top 10 universities in the world are Chinese now. Now, how do they rank these? They base them on the number of paper citations, scientific research. So consider this a warning, not a cheering of me for China. This is a warning. We try to warn people that have no idea what's happening in China. Now, interestingly, in 2010, Harvard was the number 1 university, and Toronto, this does not surprise you as a former academic, the University of Toronto was number 2 for the citations.
That does surprise me. I mean, I've always known it's a good school, but number 2 behind Harvard, that was impressive back in 2010.
And Michigan was number 3. And Sao Paulo in Brazil was number 4. And Chinese University was number 5. And right now, 8 of 10 of them in 2026 by now are from China. Toronto's still at number 10, though. Punch it above your weight, Toronto.
Yeah. And Harvard at number 3. But that's a crazy statistic.
Hopefully Harvard continues to exist. 20,200 Tesla Cybertrucks were sold in 2025. That's about half of its sales target, says Futurism.com. California has energy-boosting bills in the works that could take out some of the red tape to get solar and heat pumps installed. That's, heat pumps also have red tape as well as solar panels because of the grid.
Yep. Red tape and regulations is something that really needs to be sped up if we're going to fight climate change.
FedEx is electrifying its last-mile delivery fleet of trucks and vans in Japan. So those last mile means the package the last miles it goes to is to your door. They are electrifying that. Oh, it's another CS Fast Fact. The Canadian government's buying nearly 1/3 of Canada's concrete, Brian. Shocked? Surprised? Interested? The Pembina Institute says that. And yes, let's have another one. Almost 27% of the United States reported eating all their most recent meals alone. 27% of people in the United States eat alone. What does that mean? Why is it on this show? That's for you to decide for now. This is up from 17% in the early 2000s. So probably not a good thing. Toyota is launching its first EV in India this week. India. That is a kind of they don't let people import things to India. So there might be, I don't know if they're manufacturing or assembling it there. A mid-size SUV from Toyota. This is different than what we see in the rest of the world, but they're making actually a mid-size SUV, probably expensive, I'm guessing, for India, for higher income people. Coal power has dropped in China and India for the first time in 52 years. Why? Renewable energy. And that's why we're going to have to cut it off because we've gone way too long this week, I'm afraid. But it's been a great show. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Please remember to find us on social media at Clean Energy Pod and that patreon.com/cleanenergypod and the email cleanenergyshow@gmail.com.
Wow, I can't believe how long we've gone this week. I knew it was going to be a long one, but remember to join us on Patreon, patreon.com/cleanenergypod. We give a shout out every week to our Clean Club executive members on Patreon, Green Bastard and Brett Rowley, because they are very generous people. Thank you all for supporting our podcast.
See you next week.